In 1988, Gunpei Yokoi and his team at Nintendo R&D 1 conceived the new Game Boy handheld system with the purpose of merging the two very successful ideas of the Game & Watch's portability alongside with the NES's cartridge interchangeability. Nintendo released the Game Boy in Japan on April 21st, 1989 in North America. On July 31st, Nintendo released the Game Boy in Japan on April 21st, 1989 and in North America on July 31st, 1989. Nintendo of America President Minoru Arakawa managed a deal to bundle the popular third-party game Tetris along with the Game Boy, and the pair launched as an instant success. Super Nintendo Entertainment System and Virtual Boy, 1989 to 1995. In 1989, Nintendo announced plans to release the successor to the Famicom, the Super Famicom. Based on a 16-bit, Nintendo boasted significantly superior hardware specifications and graphics, sound, and game speed over the original 8-bit Famicom. The Super Famicom was finally released relatively late to the market in Japan on November 21st, 1990, and released as the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, officially abbreviated the Super NES or SNES, and commonly shortened to Super Nintendo. In North America on August 23rd, 1991, and in Europe in 1992. Its main rival was the 16-bit Mega Drive, known in North America as Genesis, which had been advertised aggressively against the nascent 8-bit NES. A console war between Sega and Nintendo ensued during the early 1990s. From 1990 to 1992, Nintendo opened World of Nintendo shops in the United States where consumers could test and buy Nintendo products. In August 1993, Nintendo announced the SNES's successor, codenamed Project Reality. Featuring 64-bit graphics, the new system was developed as a joint venture between Nintendo and North American-based technology company Silicon Graphics. The system was announced to be released by the end of 1995, but was subsequently delayed. Meanwhile, Nintendo continued the Nintendo Entertainment System family with the release of the NES 101, a smaller redesign of the original NES. Nintendo also announced a CD drive peripheral called the Super NES CD-ROM adapter, which was co-developed first by Sony with the name PlayStation and then by Philips. Bearing prototypes and joint announcements at the Consumer Electronics Show, it was on track for a 1994 release, but was controversial canceled. In 1995, Nintendo announced that it had sold 1 billion game cartridges worldwide, 10% of those being the Mario franchise. Nintendo deemed 1994 the year of the cartridge. To further their support for cartridges, Nintendo announced that Project Reality, which had now been renamed to Ultra 64, would not use a CD format as expected, but would rather use cartridges as its primary media format. Nintendo IRD General Manager Genyo Takeda was impressed by video game development company Rare's progress with real-time 3D graphics technology using state-of-the-art Silicon Graphics workstations. As a result, Nintendo bought 25% stake in the company, eventually expanding to 49%, and offered their catalog of characters to curate a CGI game around making Rare Nintendo's first Western-based second-party developer. Their first game as partners with Nintendo was Donkey Kong Country. The game was a critical success and sold over 8 million copies worldwide, making it the second best-selling game in the SNES library. In September 1994, Nintendo, along with 6 other video game giants including Sega, Electronic Arts, Atari, Acclaim, Philips, and 3DO, approached the United States Senate and demanded a rating system for video games to be enforced, which prompted the decision to create the Entertainment Software Rating Board. Aiming to produce an affordable virtual reality console, Nintendo released the Virtual Boy in 1995, designed by Gunpei Yokoi. The console consists of a head-mounted semi-portable system, with one red-colored screen for each of the user's eyes, featuring stereoscopic graphics. Games are viewed through a binocular eyepiece and controlled using a fixed gamepad. Critics were generally disappointed with the quality of games and the red-colored graphics, and complained of gameplay-induced headaches. The system sold poorly and was quietly discontinued. Amid the system's failure, Yokoi retired from Nintendo. During the same year, Nintendo launched the Satellaview in Japan, a peripheral for the Super Famicom. The accessory allowed users to play video games via broadcast for a set period of time. Various games were made exclusively for the platform, as well as various remakes. Nintendo 64 and Game Boy Color 1996 to 2000. Nintendo 64 releasing it in Japan and North America in 1997, in Europe and Australia. The Nintendo 64 continued what had become a Nintendo tradition of hardware design, which is focused less on high-performance specifications than on design innovations intended to inspire game development. With its market share slipping to the Sega Saturn and partner-turned-rival Sony PlayStation, Nintendo revitalized its brand by launching a $185 million marketing campaign centered around the Play It Loud slogan. During the same year, Nintendo also released the Game Boy Pocket in Japan, a smaller version of the Game Boy that generated more sales for the platform. On October 4th, 1997, famed Nintendo developer Gunpei Yokoi died in a car crash. In 1997, Nintendo released the SNES 101, called Super Famicom Jr. in Japan, a smaller, redesigned version of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. In 1998, the successor of the Game Boy Color, was released. The system had improved technical specifications, allowing it to run games made specifically for the system as well as games released for the Game Boy, albeit with added color. The Game Boy camera and printer were also released as accessories. In October 1998, Retro Studios was founded as an alliance between Nintendo and former Iguana Entertainment founder Jeff Spangenberg. Nintendo saw an opportunity for the new studio to curate games for the upcoming GameCube, targeting an older demographic in the same vein as Iguana Entertainment's successful Turok series for the Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance, and GameCube 2001 to 2003. In 2001, Nintendo introduced the redesigned Game Boy Advance.